Picture this: Spanish Harlem, New York, 1981. I was born into this world. Fast forward 41 years later, I'm in the doctor's office getting a ADHD diagnosis. So you might wonder, like, what happened in those 41 years? I tell you, lots happened. I was living a life I didn't want to live, and I realized it didn't always have to be that hard. You know, when I made the connections that I had ADHD, and then I realized, like, I needed more help. Lived a life of academic struggle. I, poorly performed in every aspect of school: reading, writing, math. What is math? I still don't know what math is. And it's a baby Jesus miracle that I graduated, but I did. And that was sort of my life from school on. Is like, I don't know how I made it through, but I made it through. I figured it out and created some sort of system that worked for me in those moments to get me where I needed to go. And to say that it was hard is an understatement. And then, 41 years old, I realized it doesn't always have to be this hard. I don't always have to struggle this much, and I started making and taking those steps on sort of creating the life I wanted to live. Not only did I struggle in school in all areas and all subjects, I struggled at home. I was, for the lack of a better word, hype. And I spoke and I rambled and I was bouncing off the walls, and I notoriously spoke without thinking. I was often being asked, like, do you have a filter? Because words just like fell out my mouth however they fell out. And when you're young and this happens, the perception of me was that I didn't give a fuck. Like, I would say things how I said them, and I didn't care about the repercussions, which was a complete opposite. The second words came out of my mouth and I heard them in my head, I'm like, fuck. And sort of that was the life I led. Those were the conversations I had with every member of my family. There was always a questionable moment of me saying something, and then fast forward into my adult life, and that proceeded, that continued. And at some point, I just came to the point where I was like, I am who I am. I say things how I say things, and you either can vibe with me or you don't. And I sort of created it as part of my personality in the package of Vivian, right? I just say things how I say them. And then, at some point I realized maybe it would be nice to, like, think before I spoke. Maybe it would be nice to kind of formulate sort of the sentence in my head before the words start spilling out my mouth. Maybe it would be nice to sit down, create a to-do list. Maybe it would be nice to sit down, create a to-do list, and actually get things done from that list on that day, versus that to-do list grow into a monster of itself, to the point where I essentially push this notebook aside and never see it again because it just becomes so overwhelming. And then when 2020 hit and I'm working from home like everybody else is, I am struggling in all aspects of my life. I'm struggling with work, I'm struggling with home, I'm struggling with my relationship, I'm struggling with parenting, because at that point in 2020, everything became one. And I could barely manage one at a time. And then that point in my life came where, like, the worlds collided, and I essentially was just like, fuck, like, I need to do something about this. Like, this is not okay, and I need help. That's when essentially I started really making a conscious choice to create the life I wanted to live, and work and break through those obstacles that made it hard for me. With that, I've developed a ton of sort of systems and strategies to get things done that work for me, but with the clients that I work with, we tweak and tailor them to work for them. And I can say happily that we've seen some positive. And if you rewind this video, at no point did I say it was easy. At no point am I saying it is easy, but I will say it's worth it.